Steven Spielberg's stirring historical drama Schindler's List tells the true tale of German entrepreneur Oskar Schindler, who during the Holocaust spared the lives of more than 1,000 Polish Jews. Here, the movie opens with a Jewish prayer and the lighting of Sabbath lamps. This color to black and white transition represents the change from the normality of life before the war to the horrors of the Holocaust. When the German army defeats the Polish army in 3 weeks in late 1939, just after World War II breaks out, Polish Jews from the surrounding territories start to relocate to Krakow. A prosperous industrialist named Oskar Schindler travels from Czechoslovakia with the intention of manufacturing an emalware for the German military, employing the large and inexpensive labor force of Jews. An avaricious Nazi party member named Schindler lavishes money on army and SS procurement officers. Under military sponsorship, Schindler purchases a factory to produce troop meal kits and kitchen utensils. Lacking knowledge of how to effectively manage such a firm, he makes contact with its Sturm Ben Kingsley, an employee of the Judenrat local Jewish council who has ties to the now shadowy Jewish business sector in the ghetto. In exchange for a little portion of the goods produced, they lend him the money needed to build the factory for sale on the illicit market. When Schindler opens the plant, he gives the Nazis pleasure and takes pride in his newfound fortune and position as hair director, while Stern takes care of all administrative matters. Stern advises Schindler to use Jews rather than Poles due to their lower cost of salaries are paid to the Reich, not the Jews themselves. Stern fabricates documentation to make sure that as many individuals as possible are labeled essential by the Nazi administration, sparing them from being deported to concentration camps or even executed. Schindler's factory workers are let to leave the ghetto. Arriving in Krakow, Gtt Ralph Fiennes starts building a work camp in the adjacent Pasha. Soon after, the SS closes down the Krakow Ghetto by deploying hundreds of soldiers to clear the small quarters and execute everyone who raises an objection, is uncooperative, is old or sick, or does so for no apparent reason at all. Schindler is deeply impacted as he observes the carnage from the hillsides above the scene. Despite this, he remains cautious in his friendship with Gtt, and he continues to benefit from the SS's protection and backing thanks to Stern's focus on bribes. The camp is situated near Pasha, outside of the city. In order to protect his workers from the guards' attacks, Schindler buys Geet's consent to construct a makeshift camp for them. After a while, Gtt receives a directive from Berlin telling him to demolish Pasha, dig up and burn every body of the people who perished in the Krakow Ghetto, and transport the remaining Jews to Auschwitz. In order to relocate his people from the final solution that is already underway in occupied Poland to a plant at his former home of Świętobrzęce in Moravia, Schindler persuades Gtt to grant him permission to maintain his workers. Gtt gives and charges a specific sum for each employee. A list of laborers that should prevent them from traveling on the trains to Auschwitz is compiled by Schindler and Stern. Included on Schindler's list are these skilled prisoners. An inclusion there may spell the difference between life and death for many of the Pasha inmates. Schindler also engages in a game of high card draw with Helen Hirsch, a worker who had been Geet's housekeeper and suffered from his ongoing abuse. Reluctantly, Gtt longs to flee with her, well knowing that doing so would ensure both of their deaths. He even considers killing her outright, but in the end he chooses to play Schindler for Helen's life. Among those boarding the train for Brinlitz is Helen, except for the train that unintentionally takes the women and children to Auschwitz. Every man on Schindler's list makes it to the next location safely. The ladies are led to what they think is a gas chamber there. After a terrifying ordeal in which they are made to undress and have their hair brutally chopped off, all they see is water flowing from the showers. The ladies are seen standing in line for work the next day. Meanwhile, Schindler had hurried to Auschwitz right away in order to resolve the issue and free the women. In order to do this, he bribes Rudolf H.S. Hans-Michael Reberg, the camp commander, with a stockpile of diamonds in order to allow him to spare all of the women and children. A last issue, nevertheless, comes up just before all the ladies board the train when a few SS officers try to detain several kids and prevent them from departing. As Schindler arrives to personally supervise the boarding, he intervenes and manages to persuade the police to release the kids. After the Schindler ladies reach Świętobrzęce, Schindler imposes strict guidelines on the Nazi guards assigned to the facility. Summary executions, worker maltreatment, and their presence on the factory floor are all prohibited. In addition, Schindler lets the Jews keep the Sabbath, and he uses a large portion of the wealth he made in Poland to buy off Nazi authorities. He tells his wife that she is the only woman in his life when he surprises her at Mass in his hometown, even though he has a history of being a womanizer. To help him, she travels to the plant with him. Right before the German army surrenders and the European war comes to a conclusion, he runs out of money. Schindler, a Nazi from Germany who calls himself a profiteer of slave labor, has to escape the approaching Soviet Red Army. He packs a vehicle in the middle of the night and says goodbye to his employees after dismissing the Nazi guards so they may go back to their homes. He receives a letter from them stating that they do not see him as a criminal, in addition to a ring with the Talmudic saying, "He who saves the life of one man, saves the world entire," though he feels he could have done more to rescue many more lives. Schindler is both touched and very upset. He flees in the middle of the night with his spouse, pretending as refugees and clothed as a Polish prisoner. The following morning, sunshine awakens the Schindler Jews who had spent the night sleeping outside the factory gates. The Jews are informed by a Soviet dragoon that they have been freed by the Red Army in pursuit of sustenance. The Jews stroll to a neighboring town. According to a title card, Schindler planted a tree on Israel's Avenue of the Righteous, which is still there and was recognized as a righteous person by Yad Vashem in Jerusalem. Dietz' fate is also shown. He was apprehended close to the German town of Bad Tolz and returned to Pascha, where he was hung for crimes against humanity after remaining stubborn till the last and in declaring his devotion to Hitler. The frame switches to a different Schindler Jewish family from Today in Color, visiting Oskar Schindler's tomb in Israel as the surviving Schindler Jews walk side by side. At the conclusion of the movie, a group of elderly Jews who had worked at Schindler's factory respectfully lay a stone on his grave. Together with walking hand in hand with the persons they depicted, the actors playing the key roles lay stones on Schindler's tomb as they go by. The late Itzhak Stern's wife is escorted by actor Ben Kingsley, while Schindler's widow is wheeled along by Carolyn Goodall. The audience is informed that there are now over 6,000 survivors and descendants of the about 1,100 Jews who were given sanctuary by Schindler. Once numbering in the millions, the Jewish people of Poland numbered just around 4,000 at the time the film was released. In the epilogue, a man played by Nielsen, but his face is hidden, looks thoughtfully over the grave and plants to flowers there.